Um, hey everybody, it's 6 years later, Leftovers Chat, and we've made it. We're at season 3, episode 8, the Book of Nora. We're probably going to come back and do a follow-up show after this is over, but I did want to take a moment at the top of this one to say a few things, because I feel like I have the most captive audience. I'll try to be quick. I think after this, me and Benji are going to take a break from in-depth TV, because this took a lot more time than we thought, even though it was a fun time at some times, especially over the last 6 months. It was a little stressful. We're probably going to do our own thing for a bit. I'm going to come back with something. I would like to hear, if anyone's listening, any suggestions, comments, or complaints about how this has been done, or if they'd like to hear us do anything in the future. That would be great. Any feedback is always welcome, but I figured I'd get it in now at the top. So just leave that in the comments on Facebook. I mean, not Facebook, on YouTube. I have to say I'm very proud of this show that we've done. I didn't think we would get to the end. I didn't think I would ever do it. I went back and I listened to a couple of the very first ones, which are just audio with some cards in there, and they're not as bad as I imagined them to be now. We definitely had some audio problems, and we were finding our way, but I think we turned this into a good little show here.
Yeah, it reminds me of one of the things they said in that. We were listening to an interview last week between Justin Theroux and Dowd, and they were talking about filming the show, and one of the things they said at the time was how they knew while they were doing it that they were doing a good job and it was a good show and they were having a lot of fun doing it. Even if nobody was watching it, they were still having a great time. They knew it was going to be turned into something pretty good. So, I mean, I don't want to compare myself to Justin Theroux here, but I guess we have that in common with the show.
Yeah, and I knew while we were doing it, we were doing something that I was going to be proud of, and I am proud of it. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't have done it without you. Thanks. I needed someone who hadn't seen the show. I needed someone who hadn't had the life experience in watching television I did to watch the show with. So it couldn't have been done without you. So thank you. I do want to give a shout out to my son and my wife, who have, he was asking me how many shows we did yesterday. This is the 28th show. We've talked about The Leftovers. We've talked about every episode. We've watched every episode more than once or twice. Just for this, they've been extremely patient, so I want to thank them. I'm sure your family has had some patience while you're trying to do this as well. So thanks for that. I feel like much like The Leftovers, maybe we lost our mojo there. Maybe towards the start of season 3 or middle of season 3, I don't know. But I think the last couple episodes have really invigorated us. And I mean, did you have anything to say on this score before we get into the episode, buddy?
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna save it to the end of the episode, but I guess we're doing it now. I might as well. I was just gonna, so obviously you're not gonna say it yourself, so I better say it for everyone. Is that you were you made this happen, and I don't know. I turned up and talked about it, but this was all the hard work and the editing and the planning and kind of shepherding me, and I don't know if shepherding's the right word. That was all you. So, any good thing that's come out of the show is, I think, all yours basically. And I know it's a passion project and you're not doing it to attract like huge views and stuff, but just really do justice to a show that is like the most important show to you, and it just comes out in every episode, and I kind of get off easy, right? Because I get to come and talk about it, and then a few hours later I look at the YouTube page and there's a new video. I go and listen to some of it and say, hey, that sounds great. But all of the kind of blood, sweat, and tears behind the scenes was all Ethan. So any kudos goes to him.
Well, I wasn't expecting any of that. I'll take it. Thank you. If I think about it too much, that'll be bad. So I'll stop. do us a favor. Thanks for saying that. Please like, share, subscribe. Even though we'll come back, we'll do something. I think I came up with a name in our last podcast for what I'm going to do next. I think I might call it the Fisher Protocol, which would be great because my last name is Fisher, by the way. Don't dox me. Thanks. But hey, man, let's get into the leftovers. Season 3, episode 8, The Book of Nora. I think we all guessed, I think you even guessed, that the theme song for this episode was going to be Iris DeMent and Let the Mystery Be. And it's kind of another victory lap moment where I know you were happy to hear the original theme last week. How'd you feel hearing it this week?
Yeah, well, for one, like you said, it's victory lap. For two, one of the questions in my mind when it came up, this theme song, in this particular place in the show, I was wondering whether it would have been the opposite way around, right? So, the theme song for season 2 coming on the second to last episode, and then the theme song for season 1 coming in on the last episode, so it kind of like retraces its steps backwards rather than the way it did it. But I think it's especially appropriate for this episode, because of what happens in this episode and the whole question surrounding Nora and where she goes and if she does go anywhere. I think it just works better for this one, and because as well, even though season 1 is the first season, season 2 feels like the real meat of the show, I think. So it makes sense to kind of bring up those feelings again in this last episode, you know.
And it just really worked for me, given their constraints that they had with the redoing the credit sequence this year, and their budgetary concerns and the way they were able to do the songs over, which almost I never liked. You know what I mean? Like, it was never a thing that I was like, oh, this is cool. The only time I thought it worked really well was Perfect Strangers theme. You know what I mean? Everything else is like, oh, you have to read this into the episode too. So I really like that they were able to do this, to say, hey, we know we're trying to live up to season 2 of this show, and we know we might not be able to do it, but we'll give you a little bit of that, and we're going to go back here. Okay. I'm going to start at the beginning. Nora gives her testimony to the scientist before she goes into the machine. They make her do it multiple times. Nora and Matt pass a fossil of a person who has gone through. The scientist goes over the procedure for going into the event chamber of the machine. Matt and Nora play one more game of Matt Libs and have an emotional goodbye where Matt relays all of his fears for the future. Nora makes him promise he will not tell the truth about where she went. I mean, we're basically saying goodbye to Matt here.
Yeah. And I'm still kind of conflicted about this, just because it's a beautiful scene and there's a lot to admire about what they did with Matt this season. But from like a selfish viewer perspective, I'm kind of like, oh, hang on, can we not just like freeze Matt? Season 2, it was perfect, right? Reunited with Mary, just this like overwhelming joy, and it's like the perfect ending for Matt. And then this happens, and whether or not it makes more sense for his character, maybe it does. Whether it's like more, there's more meaning and depth and all that. Yeah, and maybe I can concede that, but as a selfish fan of Matt, part of me kind of thinks it would have been nice to leave it how it left off in season 2 for him.
I agree, and well, no, maybe I don't agree. I mean, I think it was a very beautiful ending for Matt, and what we learn later is beautiful. And the end of season 2 was so perfect, kind of for everybody, that it'd be
Mhm.
really nice for them to have ended it there and say, "Oh," but there's always a part of me that would have wanted more, and uh, and I'm glad that we have these caps on all these characters.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was the beautiful part about season two ending the way it did, is that it felt like we'd come to a place where all of the characters, more or less had this perfect ending, and it felt like we got there in a way that wasn't contrived or forced, and it felt natural. Like it wasn't like um, they had this perfect ending, but the plot was kind of, uh, it was manipulated, and it just didn't. The plot didn't feel natural to get into that place. It was the fact that you had the combination of the incredible plot and storyline that happens, um, and the fact that it somehow manages to end in this perfect way and combines the two of them. It's like that is a winning combination. That it's quite rare to get that, and that's why part of you, when you go into season three, they're not going to do the same thing again, or at least you really doubt they're going to do the same thing again that they did in season two. And if season two ended with this perfect ending and they can't do the same thing again, well, there's only ever one type of ending we can have, which is an imperfect one.
And I'll say now, I think this is an imperfect ending, this episode. Um, but the unexpectedness of the perfectness of season 2 makes that okay with me,
Hmm.
because they could only
Yeah, that.
go, yeah, good,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And that's exact. It's trying to find the right way to describe it. It's like it's not like a. It's not like season two. You knew all along it was a given that maybe there'd be plot conflicts and this and that, but we'd eventually have this wonderful ending. Like all of that was up in the air, and it felt like it just so happened to work out that way, where it was this perfect ending, but it could easily have not have worked out that way, and that's why it's so satisfying. Um, I
and
think.
yeah, it is a satisfying ending too. It's
Mhm.
satisfying, but imperfect. Um, did you
The
notice? Yeah, did you notice that
we
in the
you
Matt Libs, one of the places that she was raised, it was in Cairo.
Cairo, yeah, yes. I mean, I made a note of most of the stuff that came up. I couldn't think of any clear links for most of the other ones, but there was 417 was a number.
Yeah.
Uh, international physicists.
Okay.
Um, for a minute when I heard international, I thought maybe he's going to say international assassin. I guess that would have been two on the nose.
Right.
There's Never Neverland, so like Peter Pan, and I'm not sure if there's any. I don't know if any of these are. Obviously, Gecko, Geese.
Um, Now, when Nora was doing her testimony, did she say clearly to the camera, "I don't lie"?
Um, well, yeah, I think she said it to the physicist, but she was facing the camera.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. The Speaking about that shot of Nora talking to camera, did you
Mhm.
notice the headlines on the
What is that?
newspaper? Did you notice what the headlines were on the
Uh,
newspaper?
I have before, but I don't remember.
Oh, it was stuff like the financial markets hold steady despite fears of seventh anniversary sell off and stuff like
Right.
that.
So the important things.
Yeah. Well, the cinematography of them next to the ocean, and Nora's got like the drip, and Matt's sat next to her, and they're just sort of backdropped against the ocean. That's a beautiful shot, and I mean the whole scene is beautiful. And I guess that is one element that's kind of uh, builds on season two. Like it's one element that wasn't resolved in season two that it does sort of manage to resolve now, which is the relationship between Matt and Nora. They never really had any moment like this that I remember in season two. Like obviously they spoke to each other and they seemed like I mean, their family, but they didn't have this kind of beautiful scene between them. So that is something unique and sort of that is one element of the season 3 finale that is more than season 2, more than what season 2 did, which is the closure between Matt and Nora.
And it all begins on that hilltop when he decides to stay with her instead of go with Laurie,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's building on that, and it is quite beautiful. I agree with you on that.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean that's it for that. Like I said, as beautiful as it is, I kind of wish none of this had happened to Matt. But
well,
there we go.
I'm sorry, buddy. I'm here for you. Nora disrobes, and while flashbacks of her children and their departure fill her memory, she slowly makes her way into the machine. She sits down, and the liquid fills her just to her head. She starts to shout something, and then we cut 20 years to the future to the Nora or Sarah from the flash forward and the Book of Kevin. And my only note is, and it's a note I've stolen from following The Leftovers by Bald Move, is, I've seen you wince a lot at nudity this season, doing the reaction videos. I didn't see you wince once, and I don't know what that has to do with it, but it is something we need to see more of in television, I think, which is non-sexual nudity. I'm not saying we need to see more of it because we need to see more naked people, but I think people need to be more comfortable with the fact that we're all human. We all have bodies and we all have the same body parts. And, for her, Carrie Coon, to do that with such conviction, and for them to show so much of it and it not be sexualized at all, I thought really came through, and it was a very emotional scene because of the flashbacks. And the last thing it has to do with is the fact that she's naked, and I'm only mentioning that because it's such a big deal for some people to see any kind of nudity on the screen. And we can get to the ins and outs of the shouting later.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you think of her walking in there?
I don't know. Well, I mean, it just kind of felt more scientific, if that's the right word. It's not like
right.
There's no. It felt like the same kind of thing. Like you don't. This is gonna sound like a weird analogy, but when someone gets born, you don't like say, oh my gosh, they're naked. It's like, of course they are. That's just how this works, And it's the same
right.
thing. It's not really. Feels like some more of a biological thing than anything else.
So when I was first watching this show, I was listening to my other friends on the Jay and Jack show, and they would send them like a half a page of a script the day before the show, right? Because they were the promotions department, and they would send it to all these people that do these podcasts as a teaser.
Mm.
And he knew that I was a crack addict when it came to these things. So we'd start Facebook messaging, and he'd be like, "Do you want this week's? Do you want this week's?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, man. Stop asking me. Just give it to me." And he sent it to me. And the one for this week was so, and my whole life at this moment is about the episode of The Leftovers coming up, right? It says, and Matt and Nora on their way to the machine pass a human fossil. And that was it, right? And so when I saw it, I said to Jack, I was like, oh my God, I think they're going to do the opposite of what he said. I think they're going to tell us exactly where they went. He said, I think so too. And that was it. And that's my memory of it, of seeing the fossil. Mm-hmm. And it happened very quick, and it was very scary. Anything to say else about this machine before we go to Australia?
Yeah, I mean, I totally do have stuff to say about the machine, but I kind of want to wait until. I don't know if I should wait. I don't know whether we want to wait until right at the end of the episode when Nora talks about what happens when she gets in the machine. I feel like that's a natural place maybe to talk about the machine.
Yeah.
If you want to, though, I have stuff on it.
Well, here's how I was considering this way it's going. I figured we would be brisk but in depth on most of the episode, and we would have two big sections to talk about. One is in the middle when she is on the phone with her friend in America, and two at the end. So
Mhm.
I'd like to go forward if possible
Mhm.
for now.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. As in the first episode of the season, we see Nora collect birds and bring them to the nun. The nun asked her if the name Kevin means anything to her. A man named Kevin came by looking for her. This is obviously bothersome, and she rushes home. Once at home, an obvious terror strikes her as she starts to pack to get out of there. And there's a knock at the door. My only note here, and is my note for this whole episode, is when Nora is riding on her bike, we have some very old timey music.
Yeah, I was gonna say the music in this episode definitely gives it it's got a unique vibe. It doesn't feel it feels like it could be from a different show or a different season. It feels removed from what we've seen so far. But that kind of makes sense given that this is set however many years later.
It's completely tonally different episode than the rest of the entire show,
Hmm. Hmm.
and this is part of it. And I have something to say when we get to the goat scene about that too. You know,
Hmm.
so a 20-year-older Kevin Garvey knocks at the door. He says he's in Australia on vacation. He acts like they did not have a relationship and nothing past their first meeting ever happened. He is wandering around on vacation and happened to see her on her bike. She tells him she knows about the nun and he denies it. He asks her if she's married. He invites her to the dance in the town that night. She's obviously freaked out by this, but says it's good to see her again and then leaves. Um, Originally, people had all sorts of theories. This was a different reality. This was Nora's version of the hotel. I always thought it was what it was, which was just an older Kevin finding her and lying because he didn't know what to say. What?
Well, yeah, I wasn't sure at first. And I think you have to watch it a second time to sort of read the scenes as they really are, and just by looking at the faces. Because first time round, you're sort of giving it a bit of slack, and you're thinking, okay, maybe this isn't the same Kevin we're kind of thinking it might be, and maybe this is some weird place Nora's in where people aren't the same, and this isn't the Kevin Garvey we know. But once you finish the episode, you know it is. You go back and you rewatch it, and just the facial expressions, just sort of there's a totally different conversation going on just by looking at the way, and it's so good. Like every time I was like looking at it, like how did I miss that the first time around? He's just you can just see it all in his face, like the sheer range of emotions that they're going through, even though his story and what he's saying is totally separate from that.
Um, yeah. So, but the first time you were watching, you thought it was something weird was up.
Well, I didn't know, I guess. So I was leaving that possibility open. I knew something wasn't right because Kevin was claiming that they hadn't really known each other. Obviously, that's gonna throw you off. And so I was like, okay, given what we've seen the rest of the show, I'm just gonna uh, suspend any judgments for now and wait and see what happens. But things might not be as they seem.
Right on.
Kevin says as well. Do you notice the line where they really put emphasis on Kevin when he says he talks about going on vacation to Australia, and he says he likes to get a little lost.
No, I didn't. No, nice.
You got to rewatch that because he puts quite a lot of emphasis on that word.
Um, well, Nora is freaked out. She rides to a payphone to call her therapist. Alive and well, Lori Murphy, who lets her know that she never told Kevin where Nora was, and she should go to the dance if she wants to. Nora rushes home to get ready for the dance. After her bath, the door in the bathroom gets stuck, and she almost has a panic attack to try to open the door again and gets knocked down by the door. All right. So, I'd like to hear what you would have to say about this before because I have,
Yeah.
I have, I
hmm
have 2 or 3 cents for this.
Well, let's just say if the previous scene of Kevin left me mildly confused, this one just knocked me flat, and I had no idea what was going on when I saw this. I was kind of internally like freaking out, like what, how? I mean, I'm not complaining Laurie's still there. I'm all for it, but I don't know, man. You really led me along into thinking something else had happened a couple of episodes ago. So yeah, I'm still kind of confused to be honest. But I've been looking forward to hearing what you have to say about it.
All right. So, do you think I was being devious, overly devious?
Well, I don't know if devious is the word I'd use, but I was and it's not even you, is it? Really, it's the show. None of
I
what you
mean,
were saying was stuff that I hadn't seen on the show, so I guess the question is, was the show being devious?
well, I mean, because I was very careful to use the words that Amy Brenneman, who at the time was giving interviews,
hmm
and she said, "Yes, this is definitely a farewell to the character," and that episode was a farewell to a character.
hmm
Um, Rewatching Certified, the week Certified came on, I was a weekly contributor to the Jay and Jack show, and basically my letter said I can't write about anything this week. I'll talk to you guys next week because I was upset by it. And rewatching Certified, certain shows rise or sink based upon a rewatch. You know, it's a Matt world sank on this rewatch for me, but Certified raised up many places, especially with those 1-2 scenes of Nora on the beach, coupled with Lori and Kevin at the ranch.
hmm
So I remember where I felt, and I remember how my estimation got dropped, and it's because of this right here. And it's the first time. It's my biggest problem with the whole show. Um, they used every toolbox in filmmaking that they had to tell us that Lori had committed suicide. I felt she had committed suicide. I believed it. I believed she was gone. If people are looking for clues in the hotel world, she didn't show up there. And this is where it gets really kind of interesting because the main article I want you to read after this, because I hope you didn't read anything for this.
No, I didn't.
They go into it. I don't know if you want me to talk about it now or you want to wait and read.
I mean,
But
we can talk about it now. I'm all ears. Yeah.
um, they and I'll give you the give you the article. It's a Vox article that came out the day after this episode did, and it's really in depth and it's really good, and it talks about everything. But it doesn't give you concrete answers because there aren't any. But they needed something to ground Nora in the real world and let people know that this was the real world. They were kind of stuck. Lori had committed suicide in their minds, but then they rewatched the performance of Amy Brenneman and decided that her performance, which she could not perform as a person that was committing suicide, she performed it as a person who spoken to her children and decided that that performance could go either way, that life was okay, and that she was just going for a swim and coming back, and they used that. And I buy all that, but I was just brought so much to the point of Lori having committed suicide. That's kind of my biggest black mark on the entire series is this right here.
hmm
Because in some ways, and I guess this is the rewatch where I'm learning that maybe it should not null and void my feelings on certified, and it doesn't. Um, it doesn't null. my thoughts on Certified have raised, but I still feel like the rug was pulled out from under me here, and it's the one thing that I loved about the show that it didn't do, and I feel like it was done here. That's how I feel about it.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm just trying to think. I mean, I guess this has already been discussed, but so Laurie is literally the only person, object, place that would ground us in that reality. Not like I mean, I guess it wouldn't make sense for her to be calling any of Kevin's children, but
Laurie's
I'm
the
just
only one
trying
that
to.
she trusts not to
Hmm.
tell anyone.
And I
Because,
guess yeah, that makes sense with the whole psychologist thing. Yeah, yeah.
but it's great to see Laurie with a baby, with a grandbaby. It's great to
Hmm.
see her with that new sweet phone. You notice her phone?
You know what? I didn't, so I guess I've come a long way since we
Yeah,
started
yeah.
then.
It was like a flip phone, but it was flat and it was clear.
Uh-huh.
So, um, so I'm happy Laurie's alive. I do think there was a bit. I think there was a bit of bait and switch there,
Hmm.
and some people are really upset by that. I'm kind of upset by it. I mean, I'm still kind of upset by it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I think they did a lot to tell us that she had died.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the problem, right, with them. So they didn't. Wait, you're telling me they didn't when they wrote when they wrote the series? They write all the episodes before they shot them all?
I think they write a season arc, and as it comes up, issues happen, and they have
Hmm.
to noodle things around here and there. Um,
Hmm. Yeah, because for a show that is so good at leaving room open for stuff to go either way, you'd think they'd have enough practice to know how to do that in Certified.
um, yeah, and I think
Obviously,
it's
the one, obviously, like you said, the reason they didn't do that is if it was something that came up after they'd already shot the episode, which is what it sounds like.
it does sound like it. Definitely for
Mhm.
certified, it came up after they did certified.
How
Yeah,
much how much worse do you reckon the reaction would have been if there wasn't even that phone call, which is like the one kind of one thing that you can point to and say, okay, we can link that to this, and so it doesn't, it's not a complete like uh bizarre switch. Like there is that one thread tying them together, that phone call. But if that hadn't been in there, what would they have done?
I think I don't know, but I think I like to err on the side of Damon Lindelof and Tom Prada know what they're doing.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? And I think that if there was a hole there, it'd be a much bigger deal than anyone thinks. Then besides everybody's Lori upset. Do you know what I mean? I just think that maybe they shouldn't have used the song "Suicide" by Gravediggers, or shown her,
Hmm.
or put in that shot of her with the certified conversation showing how she did it, or saying goodbye, or saying we're all the things they did to tell us she was dead. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm. Hmm.
And there's a much larger conversation I want to have with you probably in the next show that we might have at the end of this one a little bit about how much can you take what you read in articles in as far as canon of the show and how much of it is just what's on screen.
Hmm.
So there's going to be a lot of that coming up in with Nora's conversation.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, just to close it out. I'm honestly not sure. I guess you don't know. I guess we won't know because this isn't how it happened. But if the episode, this season three finale had happened, but removed the Laurie element, removed that entire phone call, I think by the end of it, I'm still on board with this is the real world. Like Laurie appearing there wasn't the make or break. You know, if anything, it made me feel like leaning the other way, like this isn't the real world because we were so sure Laurie was gone. The fact that she's now there is like maybe this isn't the real world. So it sort of undid all of that. Like, so you brought her in to persuade us it was the real world. In doing so, making me at least think is this the real world? Because here's Laurie, you know.
So you feel a little duped.
Yeah, but then at the same time, I guess, you know, from a selfish viewer perspective, you can say, hey, Laurie's fine, so that's great, you know. Maybe we lost Matt, but at least we got Laurie back.
And 10 episodes ago, you were like, fuck Laurie.
Well, you know, I just didn't approve of. I think there's a difference between, you know, whether or not you approve of scamming people and whether or not you approve of somebody going scuba diving. You know, I like to draw a pretty clear line between the two.
Right on. We're good for now on the Laurie conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay. What do you think of Nora's almost panic attack in the
With the
bath?
door. Yeah. Um, well, first of all, the thing that I didn't notice the first time around is how many doors and windows she just like lock in, all of them. I think at that point I was a little bit distracted by like trying to fix the audio, and I just must have just missed that. But yeah, she totally goes and like locks up the whole house, um, which is kind of okay. So it's like she doesn't want anybody breaking in. Is obviously the suggestion there. Not that I don't know if Kevin would even do that. I don't know why. Anyway, but then the fact that she's running the bath, she's in there to sort of get ready for the dance, right?
Mm-hmm.
She knows she's gonna go,
Mm-hmm.
but then the
And
door won't open.
she seems
Hmm.
excited about it.
Yeah, yeah. Apart from the fact she's locking all the windows and doors before that, I guess that's just why does she do that actually before we go to this?
Maybe that's her thing. She's an overly cautious person. Maybe she just locks doors.
Okay.
You know?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, so she's in the bath, and then what this really felt like is like so it's been 20 years, right? They haven't seen each other. Kevin shows up. Something weird's going on because he's not telling the truth. But either way, it's still Kevin, right? And she now has permission from Laurie to go attend the dance, and so secretly she's kind of excited. And it's like 20 years between them. She finally is getting the chance to see Kevin again. And of all things, like the door won't open. It's like I'm sure we've all had experiences like that where it's just those tiny, like stupid things that get in the way of stuff, and it's like, why is this even like the issue here? You know. So I don't know. I guess the frustration she was feeling is in part for that reason. Maybe is there any deeper reason to the door getting locked on her? I couldn't see any.
Maybe just to show again she can be claustrophobic in times of panic.
Hmm.
Maybe.
Hmm.
Um,
You know what it reminds me of? Sorry, you know what it reminds me of? I was watching Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Roderick Rules with my family. Uh, I don't know, a little while back, and Greg, so his brother Roderick, is like the cool kid, and he's having a party in the house, and then he asks Greg to go fetch something from the basement, and then Greg goes down to fetch it, and the door like slams shut on him, and he can't get out. It's kind of like that feeling where it's like there's this really cool party happening upstairs, but you just got like locked out because of some stupid thing. That's what this reminded me of.
which Diary of the Wimpy Kid was that?
I think it's the second film.
Okay,
It's a good
my
film.
son. I'll have to ask him about it. Nora goes to the dance. It turns out to be a wedding. Just as she's about to leave, she spots Kevin. He makes it clear he met the entire wedding party. They continue to talk as Kevin keeps up his charade of only meeting her once. Charade, sorry. Nora goes along, and we get an update on all of our favorite characters. We learn that Matt died but had a big funeral, and Mary gave his eulogy. Jill is married with a daughter. Kevin is a fucking grandpa, as he says. Um, Tommy had a divorce but is okay. Kevin never remarried as he's still holding a candle for Nora. Kevin Sr. is still alive and well. And Junior says he himself has had a major heart attack. and has a pacemaker and a scar. They introduced this Robin Trower song. I don't really know what the name of it is. I do listen to it a bunch. It is on my my leftovers playlist. I like it. It's a nice, different kind of leftovers moment, but still so leftovers. The big centerpiece, her walking into the wedding with this, song that I've never heard before. I really like the mood that it's set. I love the shots.
Yeah. I mean, I love the this set of like the open air wedding and all the lights. And I don't know, it just it's a wonderful set, and it makes sort of like a perfect backdrop for this scene between Kevin and Nora. And again, this is another example of like when I watched it the first time around, my attention was going towards what they were saying, and I was trying to figure stuff out and figure out like what is going on. But the second time around watching it, you sort of know already what they're going to say, so you can sort of ignore that to an extent. And if you just look at like the facial expressions again, it's like it's like a whole different scene. Like all the glances they keep stealing, and like just there's so much there that I didn't even see the first time. That's just all over their face. And it just gives away, exactly what they are, what they're really feeling.
Yeah, they got everything so perfect. Like, he's a guy who comes to Australia 2 weeks every year. He never really needs his dinner jacket, but he always brings it just in case. You know what I mean? And and we're starting to go down the list. We're starting to do the checkbox of what are the questions going to be at the end if we don't answer them. Where's Jill? Where's Tommy? Where's Kevin Sr.? You know what I mean?
Mm.
Through this lie that he's talking about. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've watched Mad Men. I'm sure we've talked and you haven't. Towards the
end, I mean, I've seen a bit, not the whole thing.
Towards the end of Mad Men, they start doing this thing that doesn't seem like it's related to the end at all, where all of a sudden this guy that we've been following runs off and it starts racing cars in Arizona. And you're like, what's going on? There's not a lot of time.
Yeah.
What are you doing? This is when the first time I watched this was kind of how I felt. Like, what's happening here at the wedding? Why are we spending so much time? But
no, that's exactly how I felt as well. I think I said after the episode that even up until the last 15 minutes, it's like I still have no idea what's going on. We really haven't resolved any of the major questions. And there's like 15 minutes on the clock, and like 1 minute of that is going to be outro song, so you're like 14 minutes on the clock.
Let me read about the toast real quick. Unless you had something to say before the toast.
No, I was just going to say, then when you rewatch it,
yeah,
I think I enjoyed it more on the rewatch because I wasn't stressed about that like time thing, and I knew it would all sort of work itself out by the end of the episode, so I was just kind of chilled out.
During the wedding toast, the nuns' birds are released with messages of love. The groom makes a big speech about the difference between mistakes and sins. The goat at the wedding is given the sin beads and is sent out so everyone can start anew without the weight of their past deeds. Dreams to Remember, a song from Nora and Kevin's past, starts to play. Kevin and Nora dance. One more time, Kevin lies about how he found Nora, but it's just too much for her to bear, and she runs away. Kevin almost trips up with his line about sacrificing the goat. And she tries to say, oh, have you seen a goat sacrifice before? He goes, no, that'd be weird. Right? So here she is stuck on this truth situation. And here we get this long, not subtle story about the history of the scapegoat. Right? Don't really need to do research because they tell it all to us. Got anything on
you mean about the research on the goat, you mean?
Yeah, like, the history of the scapegoat, or, where the
Hmm.
term came from,
Right, right.
right?
Well, at first, yeah, when I first saw the goat come in, I thought, oh, okay, this is just another like victory lap moment. Here's a goat for you, and then it turns into something bigger than that. Um, and we can talk about the goat again in a minute if you
Hmm.
want. Uh,
Oh, we
but
will.
I find it interesting that Nora doesn't have any beads, right? And if we're saying beads are in this uh setting, the beads are their sins. Kevin looks like he's got a few. Nora Nora doesn't have any, which is interesting, don't you think?
Well, I even think up to this moment, she has them, but is not willing to admit them.
Hmm.
And I think that's kind of what this episode is about, really.
Hmm.
Um, there's so much to read into it. You know what I mean? We could go on for hours just
Hmm.
about the scapegoat and Nora and the beads and what happens to the beads at the end. Um, so, uh, you know, just the pure heartache that's in both of their eyes as they're dancing, and Nora's unwilling to accept. She's unwilling to accept any kind of like happiness for herself, and you can see it here, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
That's
and
what
up until that moment, it's definitely one of my favorite scenes of this episode, maybe the season.
yeah.
I think that's self-explanatory. Don't need to explain why.
Um, well, explain why to me just a little bit.
Um, well, just a beautiful song, beautiful
Right.
acting, beautiful set.
Okay.
Add them together, it's just scores on every board.
So I agree. Nora races home, but the birds have not
And
returned.
sorry, I
Oh,
just
okay.
realized as well another reason that I realized on the second time around watching, because the first time when you see that dance, there was still the part of you in the back of your mind because you still don't really know what's going on. That
Right.
wonders if it's the real Kevin and this is really happening. But when you watch it back the second time and you know it really is the real Kevin, this is the real Nora, it makes the dance a lot more beautiful because it's real.
Sure. Um, but it's all too much to bear, and Nora races home, but the birds have not returned. And then she races to the nun to confront her about the birds. Um, while she is there, she witnesses a man sneaking out of the nun's room. Um, I found a scene for an audio clip. I found two. So this is the first one, and I believe this is just Nora taking out her frustration and anger. You ready to hear this?
Hmm.
Maybe they're delivering the messages of love.
It's great that your newlyweds believe that a bird with a range of 50 miles is going to carry their stupid poetry to Timbuktu, but don't sell that bullshit to me.
I'm not trying to sell you anything. It's just a nicer story.
Who was that man?
What man?
The man I just saw leaving.
You mean Father Brian? He's the only man permitted in the convent.
Does Father Brian ride a motorcycle?
No.
Well, this man did. And he was climbing a ladder down from that room right up there.
Oh. Well, that's strange.
Is that your room?
It might be. But I certainly haven't seen any men on ladders.
You just had sex with him.
Oh, no, I didn't.
You did.
Did not.
Then swear to God.
All right. I swear to God.
You're a fucking liar!
I saw you dancing with that man. That man you said you didn't know.
I'll pray for the safe return of your birds.
Don't waste your breath.
Okay. So, first of all, Nora sees a lie, hears a lie from a nun, and gets caught in a lie by the nun. I think we need a scene to clarify where her emotions are right now. She's angry and confused. And she's real nosy, man. Leave the nun alone.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah.
Right at the start of the scene, there's the Nora climbs up onto the roof, right?
Yep.
That's not the first time we've seen that. So just wanted to point that one out. It looks quite remarkably similar as well, given that it's like nighttime when she's up there and it's like a dark backdrop. I guess she's waiting for the birds, or trying to. I'm not sure what the extra sort of 2 or 3 meters of height will change, or if there's any more kind of symbolism to it. But I don't know. It felt important. I guess it all is at this point.
I think she's just racing around in manic anger. One more shot of Nora in manic anger and has to take it out on someone. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You know.
I actually forgot. I want to come back to this because I had a couple more things on the nun. But one thing that I forgot to mention was Kevin talking about the pacemaker and the scar.
Yes.
It's so bizarre that when you're watching it and you don't know if it's real or not, it starts to feel like the kind of thing that a not real Kevin would say. Or I mean, the whole thing just seems such a coincidence, right? That Kevin happens to have a heart condition and he gets like a pacemaker put there and there's a scar there. It seems so bizarre that you're like, is that real? And then even after you do know that it's real, it's still kind of a coincidence.
Indeed. I mean, I don't have too much to say on it just because we're at this point and the things are what they are and they all connect in some weird way. You know, and one of the main beefs they had was he was starting to believe his book a little bit too much. And one of the things in the book was he couldn't die, right?
Mm.
And so he wants to make it clear. And who knows what this condition does? Maybe it puts him into a state where he thinks he's in another place. Or maybe it's a condition that allows his heart to pop back on with a jolt after a very long time underwater. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a condition that allows him to communicate with Patty 11. It would be a rarer condition, but maybe.
But it was serious, and he had a heart attack, and now he has to take it easy. I love he says that he's a fucking grandpa. I love those little things that come out that they can still be the two very angry people. Like when she's yelling at the nun and everything.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about this nun?
Well, again, it's like when you're watching it for the first time, and Kevin and Nora still aren't resolved. We still don't know what happened when Nora went in the machine. There's so much we still don't know. And at this point, there's got to be like, I don't know, 17, 20 minutes left on the clock. And we're like having a conversation with this random nun. We've only just met this episode. And so you're kind of like, come on, let's get this moving. Like, why are we giving so much weight to this? At least the first time. And then the second time, you just kind of roll with it. I think for me, the part that stood out about the whole nun thing was when she said to Nora that she's not trying to sell her anything. It's just a nicer story.
I knew there was a reason I was watching the show with you, my friend. You're picking the right things out. Yeah.
Yeah, and we can, I guess we can talk about that at the end of the episode.
We will.
But that did feel like the key phrase of maybe even the whole episode. But
maybe the series itself. You know? You ready to go to Nora and the goat?
Yeah.
Nora crashes on the road back and notices the scapegoat stuck on the fence, attached with all the beads from the wedding. She tries and tries multiple times and finally makes it up the hill to save the goat by getting the sin beads off of its head. and she's literally doing my analysis. She's literally doing a Sisyphean task. Sisyphus, who pushed the rock up the hill only to have it crumble back down again, and he has to start over. She had to.
Yeah, I definitely saw that imagery. I didn't want to. I wasn't sure whether to mention it because I didn't know if I would accidentally mispronounce the name, incorrectly identify it as a certain transmittable disease. But
The Sisyphean task. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one.
And this is, they've used so much old timey music. And I wanted to mention this that this is the one time that they wanted to remind us this is The Leftovers. And so we're using I don't know if it's the November theme or the Dose Nobis theme or whatever it is pronounced. Mm-hmm. But I mean, we're literally having Nora taking the sins to save the goat and save the goat. So, I mean, so much audible gasp in this house when she tripped on the road. Oh, is Nora gonna die here? What's happening? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the whole goat scene it's one of those scenes that make you really emotional, even though you can't quite put your finger on why, and maybe even you still can't. But for me, at least, it was one of the most powerful scenes of the season. I guess the music helps, and the fact that it's a goat helps. Who can have animosity towards that poor goat? So there's no. We're 100% on Nora's side there, and there's this hill that she needs to get up, and there's this like pulsing music, and the goat is trapped by these sins, which then Nora takes, and I don't know. I don't know exactly what it means, but it's powerful.
Well, and we'll get into what Kevin says in a second, but I think a change happens between her going up the hill, her talking to the nun, her going up the hill to get the goat, saving the goat, and Kevin's description of what he does to how he found her. I think those things kind of push her over the edge into a place.
Mm-hmm.
Is what I think.
Did you have any readings on the goat in that, like when you would line up the elements, it's like, okay, we have a innocent goat, we have beads that represent sins, and those beads / sins have trapped that goat. Nora then goes and takes those sins on herself in order to free the goat. I feel like at least one piece of symbolism would be the biblical sort of the taking on of people's sins is a deeply religious kind of thing.
I think it's more admitting her own sins. And not even sins, it's her feelings of guilt and shame, maybe, of not being able to move some way past her children, even after all this time. Her willingness to let go on a certain level so she can live some kind of life afterwards. Mm-hmm. And it's really it's really the first sentence of the next section, which I'll read really quick, but I won't finish the section. Mm-hmm. Nora brings the goat home, places the beads on the paper towel rack. Okay. So the paper towel rack, the significance of that. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
That paper towel rack was the thing she was going for when her children disappeared. She was going to get the paper towels to clean up the orange juice. So she saved these. It's all metaphorical. She took the sins off the goat to free the goat, and she put them on her for the walk home. And by the time she got home, she took the beads off and she put it on that empty towel rack. And I think that's her giving in a little bit and just getting some kind of weight off of her shoulders. And that's what I think that is.
Yeah.
If that's what you're asking for, but that's what I think.
It certainly makes sense. Especially it's a weight that she didn't even acknowledge she had, which is the point of her starting without them, then getting them, then removing. Like she has to put them on before she can take them off.
Right. And her mind was such in a block, she didn't even know that she had them. Good. I'm glad you at least my interpretation of the goat made some kind of sense. Like I said, it's just my interpretation, but these ones at this stage in the game, they're not interpretations. They're hitting you over the head with a scapegoat, which is something they've used before and that kind of thing. And the stupidity of the people at the wedding to even do that to a goat. Do you know what I mean? But so Nora brings the goat home. She places the beads on the paper towel rack and starts reading the messages of love from the birds. An angry Kevin pulls up and tells her the truth. It was too much, so I got an audio clip. Audio clips just to have some this time. I didn't think this episode needed any, but here we go.
And then Matt died, and you weren't even at the funeral. And that should have convinced me. But I couldn't believe the last time I saw you or talked to you was in that fucking hotel room that night I burned this fucking book. I was so sure you were still alive, even though everyone else in the world said that you were fucking dead. I had to do something about it. So I decided that I was going to look for you. I was going to start right where I lost you. Every year, I have 2 weeks of vacation, and every year I come to fucking Australia, and I show your picture to everybody I meet. Do you know this woman? Have you ever seen her before? And they all just look at me and they shake their heads and they say, I'm sorry. Everybody, so fucking sorry. But I couldn't stop. Every year I would say to myself, I can't do this. I'm not doing this. Never again. But every year I would come back because I couldn't stop. And a couple days ago, I showed you a picture of that nun. And I saw it in her eyes. She recognized you. She knew you. And when I saw you, I couldn't believe it. There you were. And I was so... But I didn't know what to say. Or where to start. And so I just thought, oh, fuck it, or I'll erase it. Just erase it all. And maybe that would give us another chance.
You know, every time I watch this, I normally get hung up on his performance so much I don't watch her reaction. And this time I really, really watched her reaction. And that's why I think a special, you know, another switch was flipped in her at that moment to kind of let go and see how much he does care for her.
And this is, I know it's not the last scene they shot together. I think you said that was the bath one. But in terms of story, this is the last big moment that Kevin plays. Obviously, there's the whole conversation, but that is sort of Nora's moment that Kevin plays a part in. But in terms of Kevin, just like, in terms of one of those iconic Kevin performances, this is got to be like the last big one he does, right?
Yeah, and you know, the subtle, really well old age makeup on both of them is really helping. But it also shows he's still got that fire when he wants to. I mean, he's going to give himself another heart attack. He keeps talking like that. But Thoreau's been let this be our last hurrah to Justin Theroux. Just a tour de force performance from beginning to end of this series. Even in the last episode, which isn't about him. It's breathtaking.
I mean, this the whole conversation, watching it now, right? When he's actually found her, the stuff he's saying, it's like, it's fine, you're on board with it because you know he finds her in the end. But if you think, kind of flip it back and you think about how everybody else must have seen Kevin during these 20 years he was searching. I mean, he must have, for one, he must have seemed an awful lot like John when he was saying, no, Nora's not dead, you know, she's still out there. Maybe he seemed like he was crazy to everyone else again. You don't really think about that until you think about it and think, hang on, you know, 20 years is a long time, and nobody else believes him. And I mean,
is he telling them where he's going, or is he just going somewhere?
I don't know, but I think they've got to know that he's still looking for her, because he says, like, they told him that she was gone, but he wouldn't believe them, and everybody told him it was pointless. And
I think what she's getting from him, for me, is no matter what has happened, and he'll say it again at the end, he's going to take me on, take on me, right? I think he's proving that again. No matter what, you know, I made a mistake, and I mean, it's beautiful. You see his little smart car, you know. It's just, that's all I have to say about him saying so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's funny how Kevin talks about the whole, you know, he didn't know where to start, so he just erased it all. I love the way he delivers that line. But in the end, it's the way he sort of wins her respect and gets her to open up is just by telling the truth. So, I don't know, maybe there's a lesson.
And yeah, and also, but the devotion, I mean, I guess there would need to be the way to convey the emotion he was feeling, which was all the stuff before this, but the devotion he had to her. And if you're a person who, and we'll get into this, that has been mostly alone in Australia for a while, maybe that's what you need. I think they're just both missing each other in their own individual way.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you could make a whole, I'm sure you could make a whole series or season out of Kevin's search, you know. There's probably a lot of stories to be told around that, culminating in this.
The Garvey Chronicles?
Yeah. Maybe a comic book or two.
Are you ready to go and have a cup of tea?
Yeah.
So Nora asked Kevin if he would like to join her for a cup of tea. Inside, Kevin gives an update on the Murphys and Miracle, also about how the sudden departure isn't mentioned that much anymore. Nora admits to talking to Laurie. Then Nora tells her story. This is very truncated from her story. If you'd like to go check out the Book of Nora and listen to her whole thing before we talk about it, please, I invite you to. She says she walked by empty houses, abandoned buildings. She met an old couple who told her that 7 years earlier, everyone had disappeared around them. That's when she understood. While over here had lost some, over there they lost everyone. She went to find her kids, which took a long time. Then, while looking at them, decided that she would be too big a disruption, and so she left. She found the original doctor who built the machine. That also took a very long time. She asked him to build another one, and then she came back. After her story, she explains that too much time had passed to call Kevin, and he would not have believed her. Kevin says, "Why wouldn't I believe you? You're here." Through tears of happiness, Nora replies, "I'm here." As we zoom away from the house, the birds return. That's the end of the series of The Leftovers. Before we get into the ins and outs of Nora's story, when you first originally heard it, how did you take it?
Well, this is what I was saying about where part of you, when you see Nora get in the machine, all you want is to see. You want to know what happens. You want to see what happens. Like, so bad. But then when it comes down to it, like at the end of the episode, all we have to go by is just her word and what she tells us about it. And so, I don't know, it's one of those scenes where there's no music. All it is a close up of their faces. But you are so, like, what's the word? You're so, like, it just has your attention. And it's like, it's just one person speaking, but it's one of the most sort of eagerly anticipated moments of the entire series is this one story that Nora tells, and so it just completely holds your attention. And so that's for one. I was totally absorbed by it. The stuff she says about that really sort of, when you hear her say it, you think, of course, that makes sense. Why didn't I think of that before? But you didn't, and that's about how over there they lost some of them. Not over here, sorry. We lost some of them, but over there they lost everyone. And how when she saw her family, that was the moment that she knew. That was the moment that she knew. What was it? They were the lucky ones, right? Because they, in a world full of like orphans, they still had each other. And so, I don't know. It's hard. I don't know how to kind of communicate all this stuff the right way, but it's beautiful for Nora's story that we finally get, regardless of whether or not it's the case. It seems like she's finally at peace, which is sort of what we need to finally like breathe that sigh of relief and just let the series end. But if we do take it as maybe it is real and that is what happened, the stuff she says about her seeing her children and realizing that they're the lucky ones in that world because they still had each other, it's such like a paradigm shift, right? Where it's like just completely flips around the way you were thinking about it, where all this time it's been, Nora cursed and unlucky Nora, and everybody's pitying her because all her family departed. And then she realizes that for everyone else in this other world, they lost everyone, but her family managed to keep each other. And so they're the lucky ones. It's such a, I don't know, it's such a strangely beautiful flip on the way we were thinking about it that regardless of whether or not it actually happened, it's just a beautiful moment.
I remember when I first saw it, I was in for a penny, in for a pound, as I said in the very first episode of this chat that we did. It was my heart. My heart was with Nora 100% of the time, as it was with the people, and this is all I'll say at the end of Lost. My heart was with them, and I was ready. I was a puddle of tears. I was like, it's beautiful, man, and I sat with it for a good long while. And then I got on the internet, right? So, are we ready to talk about the other parts of it for a second? I mean, I don't think we don't need to. It doesn't matter. The point of this show is not this conversation we're about to have. I think as people that are covering The Leftovers, we do have to talk about it.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a couple of things that just the sheer fact that there's a machine that takes people there and a machine that takes people back, and it's all the implications of that. I didn't want that to be the focus though, because that's kind of missing the point. But I'm happy
Right.
to talk
We
about that.
okay. So we will end this part of saying, "What a beautiful end to a beautiful show."
Yeah.
The birds come back. Nora and Kevin are in love, and that's what matters.
Mhm.
And
I
we
think
should,
the goat wanders free as
yeah,
well.
and we should, in fact, if there's any mysteries, as they've told us countless times, let them be.
Mhm.
Especially since we said we were never going to get an answer to this question, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So
We should
thank
be
you for
happy with what we got. You know, let's
thank
not
you
push
for
the point.
thank you for listening to 6 Years Later Leftovers Chat, and now it's time for the after show.
Yeah. Well,
Benji,
one more thing is that I think this ending we can talk about in a minute the differences between this and season 2 and where it should have left off. But this is a huge point, not point. This is like a huge job, I guess, that season 3 accomplishes that season 2 and season 1 really didn't, which is we finally get Nora's closure. And
right?
even if
Sure.
the entirety of season 3 exists just to have this moment, it's kind of worth it because we finally get Nora's closure, and that's a huge kind of point going for season 3, I think.
And we finish the check boxes too. We find out about the Murphys. We find out that Michael's running the church. We find out that Kevin is back in Miracle, not Mapleton, like he said, and everything's moving along. And no one really talks about the departure. People went crazy around the 7th anniversary, and then it kind of faded, kind of like lots of things do with anniversaries of deaths or tragedies that happen in the national landscape or things like that. You know what I mean? And this whole thing started as like a 9/11 parable story, and there's other things to talk about, even though we still remember, and things fade, right? So, in that case, it ended beautifully. But let me ask you a question, and we're officially starting the after show now. Do you think Nora Durst lied? In her story to Kevin at the end?
I don't know. I mean, part of you watches it and you don't even want to have to come up with the answer to that. You don't want to put yourself under that pressure. You just want to let it be. But given that we're talking about this, and I kind of feel like I think maybe I'll tell you the reasons for it being a lie. I'm sure you
Sure.
probably have some of the same. And then maybe I guess the reasons against. I'm not sure there are that many reasons against though, apart from just taking her at her word.
Right.
Obviously, the sort of the biggest thing is that the biggest argument for both sides of this is that we don't actually see what happens. So, however we slant it, I guess we don't know. Is the first thing. Obviously, the fact that we don't see it is, like I said, it works for both sides. And in this case, we don't see it, so we don't know if it's the truth what she's saying. The first thing is that, and I didn't really think about this until you sort of dropped a couple of comments about her shouting. I think at the time maybe I thought it was just like the cold of the water or just like the adrenaline or whatever. But it's possible at the last minute she was shouting out "stop," and like Kevin says, she changed her mind, right? But she can't really for the same reasons as she gives in the final conversation that lead Kevin to saying, "Oh, and that's when you changed her mind," and then she says, "No, I didn't. I went through." So there's obviously a possibility right there at the beginning of the machine that she stopped them, right? There's the there's the whole thing with the nun, and you know, it's not about trying to sell you something. It's about a nicer story. And if this is the story that's gonna let Nora and Kevin be together and be happy together, then who really cares if it's a lie or not? Um, and then um, and then there's obviously all the huge implications of what it would mean if it was the truth. Which, I mean, obviously, one, it's kind of selfish of Nora not to not to go public with this. All of the many grieving people that could, because from the looks of it, it didn't really do Nora any harm to hop back and forth. And if there's a machine here and she got the guy over there to build a machine, well, nobody has to be sad about anything because you know it's just a little like bridge. You know, you can just it's like catching a plane. You get in the machine, take a visit, come back, and plus now we've got double the resources and we've got 2 Earths uh, um, and you know, I guess climate change isn't as big a problem on the other one. So there's all kinds
Also,
of cool things that would you'd think Nora would be morally obliged to spread the word about if this did happen.
and you know, I don't want to be gross, but there are like dead babies everywhere, random fetuses on pregnancy tables in Mapleton, New York.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, all that kind of gross stuff. You know, and that's where like it gets really sad to go into this kind of stuff because I mean, I have my answer is the cop out answer because my heart says I believe her, but my head, when you think about it, says no, she didn't go through. And it's a story of a woman whose job it was to point out fraud investigation, who built her life on being honest, who says she doesn't lie, even though we've seen her lie multiple times. She can't let other people off the hook for lying multiple times. We see her discover that the only way forward is to accept a lie that she's told herself, right? And to make up a story because she's good at making up the fraud investigation stories to do it.
Yeah. And I mean, it's all about how it's not really, the point is not really whether she's lying or not. The point is that Kevin believes her anyway. And it's like, it's not it's not the actual content of the lie that matters. It's the fact, not even the lie. It's not the content of what she's saying that matters, and it's not whether it's a lie or not that matters. It's the fact that Kevin believes her either way.
Or if he doesn't care either way.
Right.
Here, and I think that's the main thing. He's just, you know, he just doesn't care. He's happy that she's there.
Right. Well, when he's been searching for her for 20 years, he's not gonna suddenly turn around and walk away because of this. It's like,
right.
Plus, I mean, Kevin's had so much crazy stuff happen to him. Like, who is he to knock it? You know, I'm sure he's got an open mind.
Yep. I would like to see that other world in another action adventure story. Like Nora goes around to the other world. She's the guide, and maybe I got that from somewhere else too.
Stranger Things.
Yeah, it's an upside down. You know, now the reason why I wanted to talk about this article, which I'll just bring to you, the other main point is, when they were making the pilot, the director Peter Berg, they were running late one day, but Damon Lindelof came to him and said one day while they were filming that first scene with the baby disappearing, is he wanted to make a shot of the opposite shot where everyone else disappeared and there's just a baby crying in a car in the same shot but dark, just to have that for the future. And they said there wasn't enough time, they couldn't film it. So that brings to question, and he's also said, just because I said I never would tell people where it's going to be doesn't mean I don't have to know, you know, which brings to the question, do we bring in these articles or these pieces of media with the TV guys talking about what happened as part of the show? People argue. I've seen arguments online where people say she definitely went there because that's what the world is, because that's what the writer of the show said. But do we take that at face value, or can we only go by what we see on the screen? And I think for the canon of the show, we can only go by what we see on the screen, no matter what they say.
Yeah, well, I mean, for one, it's not really a huge jump to come to that idea of the other place is the same as this, but rather than just everybody else disappeared. It's not like that's a radical idea. Like, that kind of makes sense, and it's easy to think that more than one person could independently come to that same idea. Obviously, you know, when there's obviously a correlation between, you want to pay it more depth. I mean, give more weight to it because maybe that's what Lindelof thinks. But like you're saying, if we're just looking at the show, I don't think it necessarily has to mean Lindelof is using Nora as like a mouthpiece for what he thinks it is, because I feel like Nora could have easily come to that theory or story on her own. It's not like I mean, maybe it's easy for me to say because we've seen the episode, but like, if you asked somebody, hey, what are some theories like for where they went? I'm sure this wouldn't be that far down the list. Is that it's like another place like this, but rather than them disappearing, everybody else did. Did you get what I'm saying? It's not like it could only have come out of Lindelof's mind, and Nora couldn't have thought that herself.
No. I think, but I think half the reason is, you know, in that article you'll read, he only said one thing to the director after her take of it, which was, "Do you believe her?" That's the only thing he said. He never talked to Carrie Coon about if it was true. Carrie Coon has never divulged, and said she will never divulge, how she was playing it. Do you know what I mean? So it's the perfect case of all the artists coming together in their own way. The writer writes it as they write it. The actor plays it as they choose to play it. So yeah, I think you're right. And if it is a story, she's been working on it for quite some time in her fraud investigator mind. In her mind. And maybe it's the first time she's trying it out. Whatever, it's all semantics. The only thing I want to point out that no one ever points out, I want to go back to her getting in the chamber. Okay? And, you know, they give her, and I swear I haven't seen a lot of people talk about this, even before. When they're giving her the explanation with the Barbie doll going in the chamber, they say this is liquid. It's going to look like water, but it's going to have the metals in it. You cannot open your mouth. Okay? She doesn't open her mouth. To me, it looks like she's saying stop. On the subtitles on the poorly released Blu-ray package, it says yes. I don't know why she would scream that. No matter what she screamed, she opened her mouth when the water was about to go in, which was not allowed to happen. It would not work if she did that. And they leave it to the last second, and she starts to open her mouth. And that's kind of my main flagpole I'm planting on her not being able to go through. Because that wasn't water, that was chemicals, they said. And it wouldn't work if she opened her mouth. Am I right about that? Did they say that?
I can't remember, but it sounds familiar. Yeah.
Right. No one ever mentions the fact that that's not water. It looks like water, but they said literally it's going to be iron and stuff, but it's going to look like water. Because, you know, TV, right? That's kind of my end of the semantics of it. When I watched it, my gut tells me from her performance, she's telling the truth. Kevin believes her. I hope Kevin is a man enough of faith, which he should be at this point, that he never ever lingers too long on it or lets it get in his way. Because he's with the woman he's been looking for. And they are on the merciful together sailing away into the future of happiness.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? And hopefully she has found some solace.
Mm-hmm.
And again,
yeah, I mean, it's easy to sit here and discuss it, but like at the time when you're so caught up in the performance, I was totally on board with her. I mean, to be honest, like I know it sounds maybe it sounds silly, but the only reason I would say I would be inclined to think maybe it's not the actual case of what did happen, just is for the reasons I was saying about before, just like the whole, not even any of this subtle stuff and this symbolism and meanings and hints and stuff. It's like more just the implications of what it would mean if it was really what happened, and the sheer real world implications and what that says about Nora and I guess Kevin for that matter. But again, it's just not really the point. But
no. Do you have anything else to say about the Book of Nora?
Well, I didn't know if you wanted to quickly talk about, season 2 versus season 3. Now would probably be a good point to talk about that.
Sure.
Well, first of all, I think season 2 is still my favorite over this one.
I agree.
And I still can't believe it took me so long to actually acknowledge that. I really liked season 1, probably more than most people, I guess, because I was still. I can't actually remember why it was in my mind that season 1 was better, but up until I think it was maybe episode 4 or 5, season 2, season 1 was still my favorite. So it's still very kind of high up there for me. And I guess it's less so, like if I had to put a finger on why, it's less so the actual content and more the feeling I was getting watching it, because this was the first time and I was getting introduced to the world, and it's that incredibly exciting feeling of just discovering a new show and discovering that it lives up to what you've heard about it, and you've got like 2 more seasons of it to come, and especially when yeah, I mean, so it's just a whole kind of more the association of watching it for the first time rather than I feel like if I rewatched it, season 2 would obviously from the get-go be my favorite, but for this one, season 1 just had such a it really had it going for it, the whole sort of association and memories of discovering it. But yeah, that aside, I think season 2, if pressed, I'm not sure what I'd say between this one and season 1. I guess I'd have to say this one. I don't think I'd be able to justify saying season 1. But that's a tangent. That's not really what we were talking about. We're talking about the ending, and which is the more fitting ending, or like where they should have ended, or which ending we enjoyed more. Is there a question, or are we just discussing the endings?
I'll just say that before there would be a great question mark in my brain about what happened to these people after this happily ever after. Okay? And as much as I love the happily ever after we get in season 2, I like the fact that we got a season 3, that we get, and I do like the fact that people get some full arcs here. You might not like the end so much that Matt had the arc, but I like the fact that he had the arc he had, and there was an arc there. and that it wasn't just, by the end, he's 100% right about everything in his mind by the end of season 2, right? By the end of season 3, he's been broken, changed, and still winds up doing what he wants to do with his family and has a good ending, as you can expect. There's a lot more pain coming to Kevin than we thought at the end of season 2. No, I like the fact that we got ends for people. I like it when we have ends for people, and there's not dangling threads.
I think we're gonna. Mm-hmm. I think we could agree that it was beneficial to have this ending, and maybe it was the right ending. But if the question is which ending did I enjoy more, then I think there's definitely no contest in that it was season 2.
I think my opinion on season 2 is completely unchanged from when we started this podcast for this show. I think season 2 is the greatest season of television ever produced. And I think that there are parts of season 1 and 3 that rise to it occasionally. But just together, season 2 it's without equal.
Yeah. And I mean, like I said before, I guess what I think for me season 3 really has going for it is that we finally get this closure, or we finally get Nora come into some sort of peace, which is huge, really. It's a pretty big deal, and we didn't get that in season 2. And so even though season 2, it felt like, I don't know, it felt like Kevin he'd been through his sort of lowest lows and reached his highest highs. And so in a way, it felt like any sort of trouble Kevin ran into in season 3, I was worried that it would feel forced upon him just so he could have more kind of growth and well, he could just, it wouldn't work as a show if he was fine, so they would have to give him something, and so I was worried about what that would be when it seemed like he'd kind of he was doing pretty okay by the end of season 2, it felt like. But I think the way they did it in terms of this season was about bringing that closure to Nora, and they managed to link that in with Kevin's development, because it was about how can Kevin develop further when he's already kind of hit his lowest lows and highest highs in season 2. Anything we do is just going to be kind of in among those shadows, whereas this, because they focused more on Nora, his relationship with Nora, and the whole season kind of came to a close with Nora coming to peace. It did feel like they did manage to find a way to give Kevin more conflict to work through without reinventing conflict he'd already worked through in season 2, and that was by linking in the Nora element. And so it really comes together nicely in that we have Nora's closure in the end of this episode, which perfectly kind of meshes with Kevin's culmination of his character arc in him kind of coming back to Nora. So I guess that's just
It's almost like he had to completely, as much as he could, fix himself before. It's like you have to love yourself before you can truly love somebody else. And he had to get his midlife crisis, partially insane issues dealt with before he could realize how damaged Nora is, right? Because he's damaged, but she's damaged, right? And to get to the point where he could say, "Hey, I'll take you on now," and she's like, "I need you to take me on," and he said, "I'm prepared to do that now. I've done the self work I need to do on myself. I've gone into my heart and I've taken out the key from my other self, and I've used it to blow up all the problems that I had going on here. And now I know I can focus on you if I can just find you over these 20 years." God.
Yeah, so it that's kind of, yeah, that's what I was getting at, is it does a good job of giving Kevin more conflict to deal with, but still making that conflict revolve around Nora, who is sort of the focus of at least this episode of the season, maybe the season as a whole. I don't know. I don't know.
And I think the show started out being about Kevin, but as they got deeper into it, they were like, once they see her performance and what she can do, and they can see how damaged they can play her, and those two off of each other, you're come hurtling towards this Nora thing. Like after season 2, and after episode 2 in season 3, she gets that phone call. Do you want to see your kids again? It's Manic City from beginning to end. She's like a different person than she was at the beginning of season 3. You know what I mean? And it just opens that scab back up, and we closed it. It took 20 years traveling to another dimension and back, but we closed it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I love season 2. Season 2 is great. I was thinking about the other day, when we come back and do our last follow-up show, I would like to do like maybe some your favorite moments from the whole series, and maybe some musical moments for the whole series, because I was going through and there's so many.
Yeah.
As well as a gift I've mailed to you, and I want you to open online. Nothing major, but still a token.
Can't wait.
But hey man, that's all I have to say about the Book of Nora. That's all I can really talk about at this moment. It has got me emotional watching it again. Last night I was we're gonna do it tomorrow. Okay, I better watch it and make some notes. And I was like, this is the last time I'm going to be doing this for, well, ever, unless you're ready for 12 years later leftovers chat. Maybe that time we'll do 2 episodes a week, and they'll be like, oh yeah, this one was good. Anything else, buddy?
No, I mean, I think we're good. Any final thoughts? I'll just sort of piece together the remains of them that I didn't really cover and package them up, and we can talk about it in the recap.
I think that's.
I mean, I guess I was just going to point out. I guess I don't know how long it'll be before you can do this, but when your son finally gets around to watching it, then you can have some. Maybe I'll call in and
as much
I'll interview him, and I'll do your job. See what he thinks.
As much as I've talked about it, I'm pretty sure it's going to be a real big kind of thing, like a real anticlimactic. This is
yeah. He doesn't even like it.
Yeah,
he doesn't finish the first season. Yeah.
And I have that conversation fairly often with people, and that's okay. I'm okay. I guess I am. I do have the conversation more often than not, and I guess I'm a shit stirrer, because I'll talk about the end of The Leftovers, and people say they liked it. I was like, oh, so you think she was telling the truth? And I'll start that conversation, and then they'll say, I liked it, but I thought she, why would she lie? I was like, oh, you thought she was lying, huh? I'll flip it, because I love to flip it around, because I like to get people's minds going. But yeah, man, that's it for me. Thanks for being here. Thanks for doing the Book of Nora. We'll be back for one more recap episode, as we said multiple times. If you have any suggestions or comments or things you want to hear us do next, please let us know. Benji, it's an honor. We will talk about the recap hopefully within the week. I'll see you later, buddy.
Yep, and I will finally sink my teeth into the Leftovers internet world.
Yeah, just check out the headlines for season 2, like in order. Do you know what I mean? Like, look up the season episodes for season 2 in order and start reading like the headlines. It's a lot of fun. Read the Vox article from the Book of Nora. Listen to Following the Leftovers by Bald Move.
I'll try not to get to. I'll try not to listen to this stuff and think, crap, I should have said that, or I learned this that.
You will think that. Hey, everybody, wash your hands, don't touch your face, stay safe. We'll talk to you soon.